Since the last war, nutrition has become a science, according to Dr. Keyes.
Ancel Keys was a well-known physiologist. As an advisor to the US Department of Defense during World War II, he formulated meals for combat soldiers that became known as K-rations. Keys was also the lead investigator of the Minnesota Starvation Experiment, a human starvation experiment involving 36 conscientious objectors. In 2011, a report published by the Associated Press revealed a number of unethical medical experiments had been conducted in the past in the United States. One of these experiments involved injecting 11 volunteers with malaria, then starving them for 5 days. One of the authors of this study was Ancel Keys. Ancel Keys is also regarded as the father of the diet-heart hypothesis, the idea that dietary saturated fat raises cholesterol levels and causes heart disease.
So cholesterol at the time was a convenient villain. We had this problem of atherosclerosis, a hardening of the arteries, and there was a great deal of pressure, a need really, to blame it on something.
A chap called Ancel Keys came along and said, I know what causes heart disease. Heart disease is caused by eating. Well, initially he said eating cholesterol, but he found that if you ate cholesterol, it had no effect on cholesterol levels. He then said, well, it must be saturated fat.
He drew a graph in which he showed 6 countries, the amounts of fats in calorie terms along the x-axis and the numbers of heart disease deaths in those countries. And he drew what was probably the most perfect graph you can get. It was a superb line, marvellous. There's a flaw. Because at the time that Keys did this in 1953, there were data from 22 countries he could have used. He didn't use the 16 that didn't agree. And when you add those to his graph, there is no relationship at all. You find countries with much higher levels of heart disease eating less fat, and vice versa.
It was pure manipulating, or we could call it fraud. This is pure fraud.
Despite the obvious problems with this study, the work completed by Ancel Keys is still quoted today as evidence in support of the diet-heart hypothesis. Most authorities state that this straight-line relationship can also be seen between cholesterol levels and the risk of heart disease.
There is a clear, what's called a linear relationship, so it's a straight line between cholesterol levels and risk of heart disease, so there's no plateau. The lower your cholesterol levels in nature, the lower your rate of heart disease.
However, there are a number of contradictions to this idea that raised cholesterol levels increase the risk of heart disease.
Firstly, for example, the UK does not have a particularly high cholesterol level in comparison to most other European countries and possibly worldwide.
According to data published by the British Heart Foundation, average cholesterol levels for men in the UK are the 15th lowest on a scale of 45 European countries. Despite this, the UK has one of the highest rates of heart attacks.